In a series with frozen humanoid ice monsters, there's zombie puppets, and shadow babies birthed by priestesses of a fire god which can be used to commit regicide against one's little brother, a talking door is able to slip under the radar. But what is the Black Gate of the Nightfort? What kind of magic controls it? And what is George R.R. Martin cooking here? The Nightfort is the oldest and first abandoned castle of the Night's Watch. It's twice as old as Castle Black, which has existed for at least 600 years, since we know that by 600 years ago, Castle Black was already the seat of the Lord Commander. So the Nightfort is thousands of years old, and it's haunted, a drear and dreadful place. The Night's Watch abandoned the Nightfort 200 years ago, during the reign of King Jaehaerys. But even then, it was 3/4 empty and far too expensive to maintain. Queen Alysanne paid for a new castle to be built 7 miles east, called Deep Lake, and thus the Nightfort was retired for good. Although now, Deep Lake is just as abandoned as the other 16 castles of the Night's Watch, save only 3. Currently, the Nightfort is home to rats, ghosts, and the 79 Sentinels. This was a group of Night's Watchmen who fled the Wall to become outlaws, and they were led by Lord Riswell's son. They sought shelter at his castle in the Rills, but Lord Riswell put honor before love. He took the 79 outlaws in chains back to the Nightfort, where the Lord Commander dug out a portion of the top of the wall and imprisoned them alive in the ice, with their spears and their horns all facing north. They left their posts in life, so in death their watch goes on forever. The most harrowing tale is from thousands of years ago, about the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Jon Snow is the 998th, or maybe only the 680th something, if the book Sam Tarley found is correct. The 13th Lord Commander had one fault. He knew no fear, and all men must know fear. He was seduced by a woman he glimpsed from atop the wall. Her skin was as white as the moon, and her eyes were blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice. And when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. This woman sounds like an other, with her blue eyes and white skin, and the Lord Commander broke his vows to marry her. He crowned himself king, and she his corpse queen, and they ruled from the Nightfort for 13 years, binding the Black Brothers to their will with sorcery. Finally, King Brandon Stark and King Jormund of the Wildlings joined their armies to defeat the Night's King together, and discovered that he had been making sacrifices to the others. I have so many questions. If the Starks and Wildlings were willing to work together, does this mean the Night's King was not only harming his own sworn brothers, but perhaps making sacrifices of free folk? If the Corpse Queen was an other, that's the only mention of a female other that we have. Was her sorcery something special? Or did she simply kill the Night's Watchmen and resurrect them as whites, like the White Walkers are doing currently? And were these Craster-style sacrifices a method of making new others? Or was this closer to whatever the Bloodstone Emperor was doing in the East, who practiced necromancy, the magic of raising the dead, while worshipping a black stone? Old Nan says that instead of a Bolton or a Skagosi or an Umber, the Night's King was a Stark of Winterfell, the brother of the king who slew him. Of course, it could all be a fabrication. Maybe the Lord Commander was seduced by the human daughter of the Barrow King, who evokes imagery of death, thus a corpse queen, but that's less fun. The Nightfort was perpetually expanded upon over centuries, so the only original structures remaining are the deep vaults below the castle itself. Down in a well, far below the kitchens of the Nightfort, there is a gate. It's called the Black Gate, but it's purely white, a huge ancient face carved of weirwood. It has a faint, milky glow, and blind white eyes. In Book 3, Cold Hands brought Sam and Gilly to the Black Gate, and told them there would be someone in the castle, in the Nightfort, who needs to come with him. They meet Bran Stark, with Mira, Jojen, and Hodor. Sam takes them down the well to the Black Gate, and the gate opens its eyes and speaks. "Who are you?" the door asked. Sam says the password, part of the Night's Watch vows, since the Black Gate only opens for sworn brothers of the Black. That's probably why it's called the Black Gate, despite being white weirwood. So why does the Black Gate exist? And who made it? Well, it's probably connected to the Night's King, the other ancient piece of Nightfort history. Based on two coinciding ideas, we can form a theory. First, the Night's Watch already has control of the above-ground gates along the wall. A secret gate at the bottom of a well seems redundant, so there must be a special purpose for the Black Gate that other gates do not have. Second, the Night's King, who was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and who ruled from the Nightfort, was said to make sacrifices to the others, and this became the gate's purpose. It stands to reason that Craster is not the only human in history who needed to make baby sacrifices to the others in exchange for not being poked with icy swords and turned into a zombie. The Night's King built the Black Gate and used sorcery to allow the weirwood to only open for a sworn brother of the Night's Watch, like the ones he was mind-controlling to be his supplicants, so that the others, who, remember, the Corpse Queen probably belongs to, can have an easy meeting place with the Night's Watch for another sacrifice. And after the Night's King and Corpse Queen were gone, the others were still alive, or whatever, and they still wanted their babies. So unbeknownst to the majority of the Watch, a select few brothers would take babies down to the Black Gate and give them to the cold, so that their rangings could be safe from the White Walkers and their focus could rest on the wildlings. Maybe that's why, in the Game of Thrones prologue, the Night's Watchmen are so surprised to see an other. Most of the Night's Watch hadn't seen one for thousands of years, and they began to fade into fable. But the whole time, sacrifices were being made at the Black Gate to protect the Night's Watch. Remember, Lord Commander Mormont isn't surprised when Jon tells him of Craster's sacrifice. Did he simply know that Craster did this? Or did Mormont also know this was a Night's Watch practice as well? I also wonder if history might repeat itself. The Night's King might have been a Stark, which I'll assume is true because it's the most interesting. He was brought down by his brother, King Brandon the Breaker, and the king beyond the wall, Joramun. Has this pact between Stark and Wildling already been made? Is Jon Snow our Brandon the Breaker, and Mance Rayder our King Joramun? If so, who's the Night's King? Jon's brother, so Bran? Doesn't sound right. Maybe it's flipped then. Jon will become our new Night's King, and Bran the King Stark who will take him down. Bran is the rightful king in the north, and George Martin was planning for Jon and Bran to become bitter enemies. This was from his 1993 outline, which also saw a love triangle between Jon, Tyrion, and Arya. I'll link this post down in the description if you want to dig deeper. It's also possible that if there is a new Night's King at all, it won't be Bran or Jon, but rather just the Night King. A theory exists, which I don't necessarily hate nor endorse. Boy, this fence is comfortable. That the Night King in Game of Thrones and the Night's King from A Song of Ice and Fire are meant to be the same character. There's a whole page on the official Ice and Fire wiki dedicated to this theory, but the most convincing piece of evidence comes from however we want to interpret a quote from George. He said, in text so we cannot discern subtext, "As for the Night's King, the form I prefer, in the books he is a legendary figure, akin to Lan the Clever and Brandon the Builder, and no more likely to have survived to the present day than they have." Here's the full exchange, including the question he was responding to. A Dragon Demands wanted to know if there was any significance to the distinction between the two names, and George says he prefers the original form, which, to me, suggests they are meant to be the same character, and George likes using his own form of the name. If they were different characters, George might have used a different word than form. Form suggests two versions of the same thing. King in the North or King of Winter. Which form do you prefer? They're both titles for Robb Stark. I wonder if the Nightfort and the Black Gate might be involved in the second Long Night. Betrayal in A Song of Ice and Fire might act as a catalyst for apocalypse. According to legend, the Great Empire of the Dawn collapsed the world into chaos after the Blood Betrayal, when the Bloodstone Emperor killed and usurped his older sister, the Amethyst Empress. In the histories of the Far East, this blood betrayal, as George names it, ushered in the Long Night. There is another betrayal from many thousands of years ago, when the Night's King married his corpse queen and used sorcery to bind his black brothers to his will. He betrayed his order of the Night's Watch, betrayed his family, the Starks, and betrayed the gods and basic decency by sacrificing to the others. The histories place the Night's King in the Age of Heroes, which is also when the Long Night happened. But it's also said that the Night's Watch was created in response to the Long Night, and the first Night's Watchman defeated the others in the Battle for the Dawn. If the Night's King was the 13th Lord Commander, then his betrayal didn't cause the Long Night. The Long Night already happened. The real betrayal might have happened 200 years ago, when the Nightfort was abandoned and the Black Gate stopped getting used. The others stopped getting their child sacrifices, until Craster, who might have been sacrificing to the others for about 50 years. So what did the others do for this 150-year period? They probably just stole babies from the wildlings, up near Fen and the Haunted Forest. Maybe that satisfied them for a while, and for the thousands of years after the Night's King was gone, because their need for Stark blood was already sated. And now the blood is running out, and the others march again. This is pretty tinfoily, but I like it. The Starks, dating back to the age of the First Men and Brandon the Builder, possessed the ability to skin change. Other people could do it, like Varamir Sixskins and Bloodraven, but maybe that's only because somewhere in their thousands of years of ancestry, they go back to a Stark. Maybe the very first Other was a Stark, and thus the others need Stark blood to continue, to command their ice spiders and mammoths, and to raise wights from the dead. Maybe they're doing all this with skin-changing magic. So the White Walker lady, the Corpse Queen, seduced the Night's King because he was a Stark, and she had his babies, and they turned them into others. Now, Stark blood is needed once more. In the prologue, who were the others looking for? Not Waymar Royce. Hey, whatever happened to Benjen? And Bran is beyond the wall too. And Jon is dead. Might the others come to raise him as one of them? Speaking of betrayals, I wonder if history will rhyme.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And we'll get another betrayal at the Nightfort in the Winds of Winter. This time, a betrayal that will spark apocalypse. In Book 4, Jon gave Stannis the ruins of the Nightfort to be his seat while he waged war against the Boltons. What if, after Jon is murdered at Castle Black and chaos ensues, Queen Selyse and Princess Shireen take shelter at the Nightfort, Stannis' seat? We know that Selyse wants to be there already, awaiting Stannis once he wins the Battle of Ice. Stannis will go back to the Nightfort in need of more strength to save the North from the others. There, he will burn Shireen. Based on comments from George himself, Stannis burning Shireen is a matter of when, not if. And based on comments from Stannis, he'll do whatever he needs to subdue the dark, the Long Night. This betrayal of Stannis' own daughter will awaken Jon Snow, the dragon hatched from Shireen's stone face. But it also means that Stannis is our Night's King. The Night's King and King Stannis each have one woman at the center of their magical folly. A corpse queen with skin as white as the moon. A red priestess with white skin pale as cream. Eyes that are blue stars, and eyes that are pure red. Skin cold as ice, skin so hot it melts the snow. Both Night's King and Stannis give their seed to their woman, likely birthing magical White Walkers and certainly birthing a magical Shadow Baby, respectively. After Night's King married his corpse queen, he began sacrificing to the others. After Stannis met Melisandre, he began sacrificing to R'hllor. R'hllor loves to talk smack about the Great Other, whose name must never be spoken, but they both sure seem to love human sacrifice. Maybe it's the same magic after all.
That's so embarrassing.
These parallels and foils might mean something. Or, I don't know, Maybe I'm a peasant grasping at metal straws to save the turtles at Estermont, even though the lords are polluting into the narrow sea. Betrayals have one great outcome and one costly outcome. The Bloodstone Emperor betrayed his sister and got to become an all-powerful leader for it, but it also doomed the world to the Long Night. The Night's King betrayed his men and became an all-powerful leader for it, but it also caused Northmen and wildlings to team up just to take him down. Stannis will betray Shireen and either bring Jon Snow back to life, or awaken literal dragon eggs readers theorize exist at Winterfell or Dragonstone. But this will break Stannis. The others will infiltrate the Nightfort through the Black Gate, after Euron Greyjoy blows the Horn of Winter. They'll kill Stannis, and his dark blue eyes will turn bright. I have more questions about the Black Gate, such as, why does it appear twice? In Qarth, Daenerys goes to the House of the Undying, where the Warlocks live. Before entering, she takes drugs, Shade of the Evening, and then goes through the door. The door is a tall, oval mouth carved into the wall in the fashion of a human face. The Black Gate is a human face as well, carved of white weirwood. The House of the Undying is built of grey stone, but we don't know that it's the only material used. The building sits in a grove of black-barked trees, the ones whose blue leaves produce Shade of the Evening. These trees are a parallel to weirwoods, with black bark instead of white, blue leaves instead of red, and Shade of the Evening instead of weirwood paste. So I wonder if that door shaped like a face is built of black-barked tree, like the Black Gate of the Nightfort is built of weirwood. If this theory is true, then arguably our two most magical characters, Bran and Daenerys, both pass through gates built of their respective biomes' magical tree, and once beyond those gates, both have visions thanks to a liquid made from those trees. It's the same magic that just splits two directions. Bran's weirwood paste gives him visions of the past in Winterfell, and Dany's Shade of the Evening gives her visions of the past and future. There's also this Anglo-Saxon motif from the Middle Ages called Hellmouth, an entrance to hell in the form of a giant gaping mouth of a monster. There grew a cursed crew of monstrous kind, of which the brood in fair Hellmouth did hide. All dreadful shapes which under hell abide, that feared and shunned all men's society, of which the foulest and most foul defied was the fell dragon, whom in spite did lie. Basically, dreadful monsters live in the gate to hell, the Hellmouth. They were shunned by society, and the worst of them was an evil dragon. Trust me, I have a point here, even if it is flimsy. Going through a mouth is like entering a body, entering its mind and soul.
I'm very tired. There's been so much fun, so much sangria, wine, and food, and good company, and books.
The Hellmouth is an entrance to hell, or the underworld, which symbolizes the human subconscious in a ton of media. Think Dante's Inferno, where each circle of hell represents aspects of human sin. When Daenerys drinks Shade of the Evening and enters the House of the Undying through its mouth gate, she's entering her own subconscious, getting visions of her family and the house with the red door. When Bran enters the Black Gate, Cold Hands takes him immediately to Bloodraven, where he drinks weirwood paste and enters the subconscious of the weirwood net, which records human history, his family's history at Winterfell, through their white wooden eyes. So the Black Gate isn't a literal gateway into the human subconscious, but there is a sort of frozen hell on the other side, the land of always winter, where ice monsters shunned by society dwell. I wonder if they'll get a fell ice dragon, like this 16th century poem, and this 21st century masterpiece television program. Anyways, that's all my disconnected ravings for the day. Let me know down in the comments what you think is going on at the Nightfort and the Black Gate. Is George planning something cool here? Thanks for watching and subscribing.